From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
We're at the county fair in LaPorte, Indiana. Trade war help.
I'm Michelle Rook. President Trump says he'll protect American farmers during the current trade war. We'll find out what that might entail coming up.
In agribusiness.
It just seems like spring wheat and corn specifically always tend to go out and plant more, regardless of what happens.
Retailers working on creative ways to sell heavier weight cattle and celebrating the history of the county fair.
AgDay, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Welcome to AgDay, and we are obviously on the road today. My kids are showing pigs in LaPorte County, Indiana, and let me tell you, the competition is tough. Now, this is a tradition that's been passed down through my family for generations, and I'm happy to do the same for my kids. Before we go any further, let's send it back to the studio and Betsy Gibbon for today's headlines.
Thanks, Clinton. President Trump is using his pardon pen once again. This time he's granting clemency to two Oregon cattle ranchers convicted of arson. Dwight Hammond and Stephen Hammond were convicted in 2012 of intentionally and maliciously setting fires on public lands. Their case stemmed from a dispute over federal overreach. A federal judge gave the father and son lighter prison terms, but it was overturned and the Hammonds were given longer time behind bars. That decision sparked a standoff by supporters in early 2016. New numbers from U.S. Meat Export Federation shows U.S. beef exports are strong while pork exports trend lower. USMEF says beef set a new value record in May while increasing significantly year over year in volume. May pork exports are lower than a year ago, especially in Asia. May exports to China and Hong Kong were 34,000 metric tons, down 31% from a year ago, while export value dropped 25% to nearly 80 million.
We need to get back in these markets. Trade is really the lifeblood of this industry. I mean, over 27% of our production's exported. This is a big deal. But to sum it up, I'd say our producers are being patriots.
USMEF says U.S. pork cuts and pork variety meat entering China now face a duty rate of 62% compared to 12% other China suppliers have, including the European Union, Brazil, and Canada. Officials from Mexico are preparing to import more Brazilian pork. Mexico currently imports pork from the U.S. and Canada, but according to soybean and cornadvisor.com, with trade tensions increasing between the U.S. and Mexico, Mexico is looking for alternative sources. The pork would come from Santa Catarina, which reportedly has the same phytosanitary standards as the U.S. Speaking of tariffs, USDA is releasing its crop production and WASDE reports on Thursday, except this time the estimate will take into account tariffs on U.S. ag exports announced by China, Mexico, Canada, and the EU.
And what that means is that USDA may very well reduce their projection for new crop soybean exports, which could be very, very detrimental to the balance sheets. USDA pegged the 18-19 soybean carryout at 385 million bushels in June. There are a lot of analysts who believe that that number could climb as high as 600 million, maybe even as high as 700 million come next Thursday. So we may have some bearish news still headed our way.
China is the #1 market for U.S. soybeans, and Mexico is the top importer of U.S. pork. Those are your headlines. Now back to Clinton in LaPorte, Indiana.
All right, thanks, Betsy. Now we turn it over to Mike Hoffman. He has a look around farm country in today's crop comments. Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Speaking of the fair, we may have a future competitor for the show ring right here. John over in central Indiana sending us this picture of his son Charles. John says Charles marks 6 generations of the family who hold, lead, or show cattle. And over in Central Point, Iowa, John Rosenberry is side dressing his corn crop. He says the crops look good so far, better than last year. He expects corn to be tall with all of the heat that the area has been receiving. However, he says you don't have to travel far to see pockets that look poor with too much rain. USDA reports 78% of Iowa's corn crop is rated good to excellent. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, is mainly going to start off fairly windy in the northern plains states. As we head through the afternoon, that'll spread into eastern Colorado, western Kansas, and a few other parts in the southwest. Heading into the day tomorrow, a little bit on the breezy side, western Great Lakes, back into the Black Hills area, and then that spreads a little bit off to the southeast as we head through the afternoon, a few pockets across the southern plains as well. We'll have details on your forecast coming up, but first here are some hometown temps.
Keeping track of the shifting market prices has never been so easy. Get the latest commodity prices sent directly to your cell phone with market updates. Just text MARKETS8 to 31313 to get started.
Even before the trade war began, discussions about tariffs devastated the markets. Soybeans, corn, pork, all lost value. The administration has been looking at ways to protect critical industries like agriculture from retaliation because of trade. What would that program look like? What would a trade compensation program be? Michelle Rook reports.
The United States is in a full-blown trade war, which is hurting American agriculture. But the Trump administration says they have a plan to protect farmers. Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue says the president will ultimately achieve better trade for U.S. farmers. And during the trade war, he has their back.
We don't want them to be the victims of trade dispute market disruptions in that way. And we will look at that and compile that and use what resources we have.
The question is, what will a trade compensation program entail? Farm group leaders say there's no precedent to follow.
One-time payments, perhaps a marketing loss, some sort of assistance program. There's so few examples to look at in history to understand where we might go with this.
What do you do for non-program crops? What do you do about the livestock folks? What do you do about the ethanol folks? You know, it isn't just the program crops that are involved here.
House Ag Committee Chair Mike Conaway says the Secretary was given some trade compensation authority in the omnibus bill.
I've got confidence that he will use those appropriately. He's gathering that data right now on a commodity by commodity basis to see where it is, see what can be done out of that, and I look forward to working with him and seeing how how to use those resources.
Beyond the traditional farm programs, though, the Secretary has provided few details.
Obviously, everyone knows that we have the CCC Charter Authority. I appreciated very much Congress sort of uncuffing us. Some of those funds were limited.
Other lawmakers like House Ag Ranking Member Colin Peterson oppose a trade program.
If we're going to put money out there, the money should be put into the Farm Bill, long-term, 5-year safety net. That makes sense. To do a one-time bailout is a big mistake.
Farmers also say they want trade, not aid, so they're asking the administration to get these trade issues resolved as soon as possible.
And get agriculture out from under, the truck that's kind of run over us right now, and enable us to get back into the marketplace as opposed to waiting for some type of government handout.
It's really anybody's guess what this might look like. It certainly will not replace getting a good price from the market, which is ultimately what we want to see.
Even soybean farmers who face a 25% tariff from their largest customer, China, say they want to get their income from the market.
We've worked for half a century or for longer than a half a century to develop markets around the world for our United States soybean products.
And so they want the trade war to end before there's long-term damage that no compensation program can reverse. I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
When we come back, we'll have a check of markets from the agribusiness desk, and later, the sights and sounds of the fair from years gone by.
AgDay, brought to you by Top Third Ag Marketing. Farmer first with a plan for every market.
Now let's see how markets moved on Tuesday. For that, we turn it over to our friends on the floor of the CME in Chicago.
It has been a heavy Tuesday here in the grains. No turnaround Tuesday. Looking for some higher trade. We've seen lower trade across the board. Although soybeans tried to hold it up a little bit early. At one point we were up 8 or 9 cents or so, closing the day under pressure, but that pressure is really coming from the corn and the wheat. Wheat, from a technical perspective, had a gap to fill down below us. We've gone and we've done that here today and actually gotten through it a little bit. And then as far as corn is concerned, a little bit of a weather forecast. And the idea that we really just don't have any major weather concern as we get into July. We've got crops that are really far advanced. You have good crop conditions that we saw yesterday evening after the close. And the idea that we're going to go through pollination with the vast majority of this corn under fairly good conditions. We have hogs under a significant amount of pressure here today. We are worried that we're going to be oversupplying the market with new facilities coming online just in the last 6 months or so. We were really counting on robust domestic demand, which we have seen, and also robust export demand. Going forward, the concern is that we're going to have a lot of oversupply here in the States, and markets are responding to that with lower prices.
Doug Worling, Bauer Trading, our guest here at the Agribusiness Desk today. Doug, as we look at the acreage report, wheat acres, pretty healthy out there, especially on the spring wheat side.
Yeah, they came in at 13.2. You know, that was substantially higher than the trade estimate. Now, it just seems like spring wheat and corn specifically, they always tend to go out and plant more, regardless of what happens. So that happened. The wheat market is gaining some strength because of global scenarios. We'll get into that here in a little bit, but it leaves Minneapolis wheat struggling at this point in time because you're going to just add to a supply that had kind of been dwindled down. Now, the good thing about that is when you look at the global situation in wheat, you know, the last few years we've really reduced our production here domestically for hard red winter.
We have.
Because of price. The global situation, we have seen Australia have not a good crop last year. They're struggling right now. Russia's crop, for example, they usually are 84 million. We're talking 68.5.
Wow.
We're talking about early wheat yields in Europe coming in below expectations. So there's a little bit of interesting news creeping into the wheat. And oh, by the way, you have a huge fund short position in that market. So that's why you saw the response you did there towards the end of the week.
Okay.
And going forward, if that continues, you know, that is a market where we use that every day and someone produces it every day. If you stop producing it, and we have less and less stocks tighten up, and the next thing you know, you're in a scenario where prices are a lot better than people think. So put that on your radar.
Yeah.
It's a sleeper market. There's some interesting undertows in it that a lot of people are just so quick to say, well, this is what the supply is. It's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Do you think we'll have better answers when it comes to winter wheat planting time, which is going to, you know, that September time period, October?
Well, right now, we're making the assumption that Russia or Europe is not going to tap into their grain reserves, and we're going to pick up some export business.
Okay.
Because we really don't get any export business. And depending on where price is, that's what's going to determine our planting acres in the fall.
Okay, we'll keep an eye on it. Appreciate it. We'll be back with more AgDay.
For a free 2-week trial to Jim's daily global market letter, call Bauer Trading toll free at 1-800-533-8045. AgDay, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
Welcome back to AgDay. Mike, you know, it's been in the mid to upper 80s here at the fair this week, and I think everybody wants to know if that heat here in July is going to continue.
Thanks, Clinton. Well, at least for now. We do see some changes coming over the next week to 10 days, which we'll show you in the jet stream coming up. But for your part of northern Indiana, you still have 4 or 5 more days of the moderate to intense heat. Here's the way the map shapes up this morning. You can see an area of low pressure over the Gulf. Chris, heading up the east coast, it's going to stay offshore. We don't really have to worry about that, except if you live in far eastern Canada. In a couple of days, you can see a storm system moving through southern Canada there with a cold front and warm front to the south. There will be some areas of showers and thunderstorms, a little bit of a focus along this cold front moving through the mid-Atlantic back into the Tennessee Valley this afternoon. Obviously, the monsoon moisture, hit and miss showers and thunderstorms in the southwest, a little bit in eastern Texas and the southern Mississippi Valley as well. By tomorrow morning then, you may see a complex of thunderstorms over the northern Great Lakes to start the day. Not a lot of activity elsewhere across the country. You can see how Chris will fold into the cold front and just become an area of low pressure, probably a pretty strong one though, as it moves into the far eastern portions of Canada late in the day tomorrow. And you can see showers and thunderstorms developing along this cold front from the northern Great Lakes all the way back into Nebraska by tomorrow afternoon. Other than that, it's just hit and miss variety thunderstorms in the heat of the southern portions of the country. Precipitation estimate past 24 hours, you can see not a lot. There's been some hit and miss stuff, mainly southwest Florida, a little bit in the southwest. Adding in the next 36 hours, excuse me, you can see some areas on our computer model, eastern Texas, western Louisiana getting some decent rain in pockets. Same idea in the southwest all the way up into Wyoming, and also the northern Great Lakes in that string along the cold front all the way back across parts of Iowa and Nebraska. There's the high temperatures today, still in the 90s through most of the plain states, 80s in the Great Lakes, 70s into the northeast. Lots of variance out west, obviously, as is typical. All depends on the height or the elevation of where you live. Low temperatures tonight, wow, kind of muggy 70s. Most of the plains throughout the southeast, a little bit less muggy. Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, and the northeast. Heading into the day tomorrow, we'll see the 90s cut back in the northern plains behind that cold front. Other than that, still lots of 90s, plain states into the southeast. All right, here's the jet stream. You can see the ridge kind of comes back, keeps the heat going for 3 or 4 days across the Great Lakes. Then we see the next trough, and this is the one that looks like it's going to start to change the overall pattern with a trough in the east and the ridge kind of gets shoved to the west. Kind of believe that will be the main pattern as we head through the rest of summer. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, Wickenburg, Arizona, partly sunny and hot. An afternoon thunderstorm in many areas, high of 95. Mankato, Minnesota, mostly sunny, hot and humid, high of 91. And Salisbury, Maryland, partly sunny skies, a spotty afternoon thunderstorm, high of 88.
All right, thanks, Mike. Next, we'll check on a trend in the beef industry causing challenges for retailers. And later, the classics of the county, traveling back in time to life in the past. Welcome back. You know, the Beef Barn, that's where I spent a lot of time as a kid at the county fair. In the commercial industry, we've seen less expensive grain and strong demand, which has helped to push carcass weights even higher. And as those cattle get bigger, some retailers say they're starting to have an issue.
Finished beef cattle weigh 330 pounds more today than 40 years ago. But meat cutters still try to maintain retail package weights equal to those from decades ago. Meat scientist Gary Smith explains.
Part of that is because the average family size has been reduced. It's now 1.7 people per household. And so the ideal package in a retail market is somewhere between 3/4 of a pound and 1 pound. So if you're going to sell a steak and it actually is bigger in size, width, and depth, and length, the only way that you can stay within that package target is to cut them thinner.
Consumers who get poor results with thin steaks switch proteins and cost the beef industry an estimated $8.6 billion per year in lost sales. If retailers won't innovate to cut thicker steaks, a whole new marketing approach might be in order.
I think we've hung on to things like T-bone and porterhouse and top sirloin, and I don't think that means anything to a millennial.
A recent Texas Beef Council study found 356 different beef cuts offered at retail, up from a more basic 90 cuts 40 years ago. But Smith says no name-based system will work well with millennial shoppers.
And we spend a lot of time in these grocery stores watching them. And if anybody thinks they're going to stop and look up a bunch of things on their cell phone and figure out how you would cook that if you got it, I don't know who that's supposed to be, but we didn't see those.
Food for thought. While producers might worry less about making cattle smaller and just focus on making them better. I'm Bob Cervera.
When we come back, the sights and sounds of the fair from years gone by.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Discover the power behind the M6 series at Kubota.com or visit your local Kubota dealer today.
One of the things I love about county fairs is that they're all unique and that they're all different. They have their own set of attractions. Here in LaPorte County, Pioneerland is one of those attractions, but it's not the only part of the fair that enjoys celebrating history.
We're in LaPorte, Indiana at the LaPorte County Fair, the oldest fair in the state of Indiana.
Angel, she's 11. This is her first year. She's never done this before. She's doing really good.
We have a little over 400 pigs that'll be showing here tomorrow. 55 different classes of pigs, so that'll make a pretty good show. It shows responsibility for the youth to learn that they have to take care of their animals, not just because it's a pet or something that's going to stay with them, but it is a livestock animal that's going to produce food.
Are you showing or are you too young yet? Mini 4-H? No. 4-Hers are workers, and that's something that we really like to show through this program. I still get to be in the barns, I still get to wash pigs and have livestock here. They're just not mine, so I'm not completely tied to that responsibility, so I can always pawn it off on someone else.
Well, it's kind of what you call a trailer queen. You know, it just goes to shows on a trailer and unloaded and, nope. You know, it's about talking to people at the shows and telling them about the tractor.
This is a model called like a Thrasherman Special. It's because it's got the whistle.
signal to the guy on the thrasher, you know, or to speed up or slow down and things like that.
What you doing?
Milking.
What you doing?
Milking.
Why?
I don't know.
Thanks, Russ, and that's going to wrap us up for this special edition of Ag Day. Thanks for coming with me to the fair, and I hope you have a great day and a great week out in farm country.